Somebody out there suffers with that ba-bum-bum feeling in your heart. Or perhaps maybe somebody out there struggles with dizziness or the fear of going to a grocery store because you don't know whether your anxiety or your heart is going to go so fast and then it's just going to stop beating in the midst of the grocery store. Some of you struggle with heart palpitations where it feels like your heart is bouncing out of your chest. And others suffer with the feeling of too slow of a heart and fear that your heart is not working correctly. Chest pain, you name it, the symptoms are endless and they seem to always change or be different. Well, today we're going to talk about that and we're going to hone right in on the causes and how to overcome them, all in a simple video. And as a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. Remember, always check with your cardiologist or your family doctor and get the proper tests if you feel that your heart is having problems. But once you're cleared of that, let's talk about what's happening right now. Cardiophobia is a simple word that sums up the phrase of fear of your heart. Some people would even go as far as to say, my heart is scaring me. There's many different videos to talk about how and what might be going on in your body, but a lot of them don't touch on the actual subject at hand or touch on how to really stop this from plaguing you to a point of full-fledged agoraphobia or fear of even leaving your house. How many of you struggle with the worry of lifting a case of water because you're in fear that your heart will go into arrest from the strenuous activity of lifting the water? Or what about going up a pair of steps and you're worried that your heart will just start racing or you'll go into a cardiac event or a heart attack? How many of you experience dizziness upon standing or upon walking into a store? Now, there's different causes of dizziness, and that should always be addressed through a doctor. That could have something to do with blood sugars or syncope and things of that nature. But when it comes to anxiety of the heart, it's pretty amazing what the brain can do. So we're going to dive right in. Your brain and your body is an amazing set of systems, all designed to work automatically for your benefit and protection. Your body is constantly responding to different things throughout the day, whether it's temperature changes, fears, or things coming at you from nowhere. Your body can respond to dangers without even having to think about it. And it even has the power to go into a superhuman mode if necessary. They call this the fight or flight instinct. And it's actually triggered through the amygdala of the brain, which is this very basic part of the brain, but has such a big responsibility. You see, the amygdala is actually responsible for triggering those fight or flight instincts, keeping the body safe, knowing if it's in danger, and how to respond to it, because our brains are a little slow. So if we had to think about taking our hand off the hot stove, well, you'd probably damage your tissue. That's why you have the amygdala and your autonomic nervous system, which is a pretty awesome thing. But sometimes it goes haywire. And this is a behavior that grows over time. Many people have their first anxiety attack. It could be, for instance, I'll speak of my own. One day we were driving to Disney World. I was in the back seat of a car. Next thing you know, I started feeling tingling all in my hands. I started feeling numbness all through my face. Next thing you know, my heart was racing out of my chest. I could not feel my face, and my hands cramped and stuck like this. I knew that I was dying in that very moment. No idea what was happening. My sister, everybody tried to figure it out. No clue. Called the ambulance, ended up in the hospital. A couple rounds of Valium and a lot of embarrassment later. And I went home, and from that moment, every single day, I was plagued with some form of that for my entire day. My life was changed. That started 14 years ago. Just 2 years ago, I came to an understanding and a true knowledge on how to overcome this just 2 years ago. So I suffered with this for many years because of not knowing what was going on. I went to cardiologists, doctors, every single step. I can't tell you how many times I was in the emergency room because of these feelings. And I want to say something. Don't feel embarrassed if that is you, because these symptoms are not in your mind. They are physical symptoms. There is physically something going on in your body. But what is going on now? Some of you out there might just be in your home right now and you are not able to go to the grocery store. You are in the midst of these symptoms. Every chest pain, you immediately are worried. You don't want to get up off your couch because you're afraid that the chest pain is going to exacerbate into a heart attack. There's this dizziness that's happening to you every time you get up and you try to go anywhere. You can't lift water bottles. You don't even want to cook sometimes, or even answer your door because you're afraid of your heart. Well, we have to put a stop to this right now. So, going back to the amygdala of the brain, this is a part of the brain that develops as you grow. So when you're a child, you start to learn what's good and what's bad. You learn that if things are really bad versus not so bad. And of course, your parents play a big role in if they overprotected you or underprotected you, can have a lot to do with your amygdala. But for instance, in the case of myself, my brain constantly is reverting back to that moment in that car, the tingling of the hands, the face, the things like that. So my anxiety symptoms would always manifest as numbness and tingling or face. Now, I eventually said, you know what, brain, I am going to ignore those symptoms. And I started to overcome it. Next thing you know, I started having dizziness and all these new symptoms. Boom, I end up back in the emergency room because my anxiety always manifested as numbness and tingling. But now I got new symptoms. Well, all the tests happen, nothing wrong. So here we are again in this downward spiral of anxiety attacks or cardiophobia. So the amygdala does not have much thoughts going on besides the fact that I need to turn on or turn off. So certain activities throughout the day will trigger it to turn on, and it will also trigger it to turn off. So when you first start to there's always going to be a trigger point for every anxiety, and not many people know what their triggers are. So it's really good to figure them out, because that's how we're going to overcome this today. So for me, my triggers are the thought of getting up and going to the store and being able to get through the entire store and pay for my groceries and get out without having a cardiac or anxiety event. Also, the lifting of waters, the different things like that, cardio strenuous activity, working a full 8-hour shift. Just the thought of that alone is triggering the dizziness. So it's really important to know that those are the triggers. So that way, when you do start to go into your everyday life, I'm going to prepare you with the tools that you need. So, amygdala has to be taught that the behavior that you are doing is safe, because as you know, the more that you refrain from doing something, the more it tells the amygdala in your brain that what you're about to do is dangerous and it's going to kill you, because that's all that function is for, to either keep you alive. That's all the amygdala does. So if you are putting on these blocks before going to a store, it's telling your amygdala, look, the store's bad, and eventually you're never going to be able to go in a store again. So what you have to do is start getting to the point where when you are about to go to the store, many of you develop different behaviors for checking if you're okay. For instance, feeling a pulse, feeling the pulse here, touching your face, feeling if you're sweating, Googling symptoms. Any reassurance instantly triggers the amygdala, because you are thinking in your mind that something is dangerous, and you're checking your body because you feel that you are in danger. So the first thing the amygdala is going to do is, boom, it's going to activate right before your eyes, and it's going to start to release the cortisol and the adrenaline, because it's preparing for you to defend or fight or flight. So we have to stop this. You cannot check for a pulse. Stop checking your pulse. I'm going to be very straight up with you. Do not do controlled breathing. So many millions of views on these videos, all these videos talking about controlled breathing. That is the last thing you want to do, because every time you control your breathing and try to force your body to do something other than what it automatically knows how to do, you're going to be triggering now breathing as the enemy. And it's going to just trigger the amygdala to release more cortisol and adrenaline. It's a never-ending spiral to the point where you are 100% agoraphobic and you are not going to leave your house. And eventually you're not even going to be able to walk to your kitchen. And some of you might already be there. The most important way to overcome this once and for all is called cognitive behavioral techniques, CBT. There's no need for medications. There's no need for Valiums and Xanax and things like that, because unfortunately they numb that autonomic system. They numb the amygdala, and then once the med runs out, you're going to be faced with 10 times more anxiety. It only band-aids the problem. Now, there's medications out there, and therapy is needed for some people. I'm not going to disclaim. We have to disclaim that some people do need it. But for the most part, this is something that has to be learned and relearned. There is hope. Your days are not over. Cognitive behavior, exposure therapy. Let's go to the grocery store together. Let's go right now and focus on just the task at hand. When you go to the grocery store, do not put your hand on your neck and feel your pulse, or on your arm. Do not check for sweating. Don't look to see if you're numb. Don't Google symptoms. Don't check your Fitbit. Those are the worst thing that were ever invented. I know that it's a good thing because it does send EKGs to people with heart problems. There's a time and a place. But if you got if you got fear of your heart, that's the last thing you should be wearing. Because it does go off for random events, and you'll get yourself all scared. You'll be like, oh my gosh. So, bad idea. Just think of something positive as you're doing things, and just go and get this done. And when you start to feel that little bit of dizziness, you automatically just bring to the attention that this is anxiety. Tell yourself that. And I'm going to tell you one trick. Now, don't do this all the time because you don't want this to turn into a compulsion, but smile. That's right, smiling. The act of smiling triggers immediate response to your amygdala. And it says, I am dying, because the only thing it knows is you're dying when you're in a panic attack. I'm dying, but he's smiling. So it just kind of cancels itself right out. Before you know it, if you keep that smile going, you're going to be out of that panic attack before you know it. Forget about the deep breathing. Forget about that stuff. You're going to put yourself into even more anxiety, and you're going to cause yourself to hyperventilate. Every time you try to control your breathing, you're screwing your saturation and your alkaline versus acidic blood. You're throwing everything out of whack. Just let your body do what it does best and breathe, okay? And forget about it. The best thing to do is forget about your heart, forget about your breathing. Because remember, you probably have been fighting anxiety now for 10 years. And guess what? You're still here. So you literally put yourself into a panic attack every day over this stuff. You think you're dying every day, but you're still here. At what point are you going to finally say to your brain, you're wrong? That's what you have to say when this happens. Exposure therapy. Now, unfortunately, it's going to be uncomfortable the first couple times. It's going to take some time, and you might have trouble in the beginning. And the most important thing is to not feel down, when and if you have to cut that shopping trip short. But just remember, every time you cut it short, you're telling your brain that the store is dangerous. So really, you have to get through it right to the end and pay for that food and leave with the biggest smile on your face and go home and feel accomplished. And the most amazing thing that's going to happen is you're going to start feeling confident again. You're going to start showing your brain that I am able. Because many of you are totally fit and ready to do this. And then when you're ready to take a step forward even more, start that exercising again. Start with that light walking. Get your heart beating. The heart likes to beat. It likes to beat fast, actually. It's called aerobics. It's really good and strong for your heart. Makes it grow and get stronger. So it's a really good thing. So when you start to look at it in that way, like my heart's racing, it's important to also know that if your heart's racing, you are not panicked. You're not going to pass out. Because the blood pressure is elevated, the heart's going, the blood's flowing. You only pass out when your heart goes too slow, and that usually your body will regulate after that, and you'll be fine. I was an EMT for many years, and one of the biggest things, people would get worried, when they would pass out from an anxiety attack or something, because they would have sudden syncope, which is just like, you pass out. I mean, people faint. It's called fainting. When It's like a surprise birthday. It's like, surprise! Oh, how many times does that happen? It's not dangerous at all. There's hardly any danger in it at all. And the body's amazing. It goes right back to homeostasis, they call it, where everything's equal. Sometimes your body needs a reset. And believe it or not, it happens to kids all the time. We just don't notice. Have you ever watched your kid jumping around and playing, and all of a sudden they just kind of lay on the ground and go, ah. Well, that's kind of it. They basically have, like, syncope. So we get it. We'll freak out for 3 hours. Be like, oh my God, there's something wrong with my heart. No, it's really just very simple bodily functions. And the most important part of this video is to really smile about these things. Let's turn anxiety into a funny thing. This is how we're going to overcome this. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Not CBD, CBT. Look it up. Don't just take my word for it. And remember, we're going to overcome anxiety together because we've all suffered with it, especially in this day and age. We'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.